What's going on, family? How is everybody doing? Please get your libations. Get whatever you need for the evening. I saw you, Marguerite, with the red wine. Get whatever you want for the evening. It can be chamomile tea just to get you ready for bed. A little bit of water, a little bit of soda. I'm not. You might need some. You might need a bit of fizz for the evening. So do whatever you need to do. Fam, hit that like button while we are talking, while we are here. We just got here. Please take a moment and hit that like button for me. I would appreciate it. Cost you nothing. You can also subscribe. Hit that sub if you haven't already. Hit that bell to get notifications if you haven't already. Also, if you want to donate, you go to donatebrown.com or patreon.com/ycarnell. It's all up to you. Or subscribe to the newsletter. It's in the description. $2 a month. That is all on you. If you aren't having trouble getting the newsletter, please email me at editor@breakingbrown.com, and we'll get that figured out for you. So, fam, also don't forget October the 24th. That's a Thursday. Where do we go from here? Chaos or Community? Martin Luther King Jr. Do not forget that we will be reading that. That is the book club selection. So we will be reading that. Okay, well, most of us have already read it, but we will be having our book club discussion about King and answering that question. He asked the question, where do we go from here? It's our job to kind of like, hey, answer that question. So let me just go to something, fam. I read things regardless of whether or not I agree with the person. I try to read widely. So Corey Robin, who is a leftist, wrote a book about Clarence Thomas. I have been kind of waiting for this book because, and I haven't read it, it just came out, but I wanted to talk about it, and we might make it a book club book, but I don't know what you all would feel about having a conservative like Thomas who has kind of gutted so much or been a part of gutting so much that we care about. But I like to, you have to know people on the other side and figure out, because at some point you may be in a position to influence them. And how do you influence anybody if you don't know where they're coming from and what their thinking is? So I wanted to discuss Clarence Thomas. I like to frame everything, so I wanted to discuss him and what I saw from a couple of interviews and a piece written by Corey Robin. And it would be great if I could have a discussion with him, but I know people are so political sometimes. Like, well, I don't agree with your politics, so I don't. Who knows? But what I want to do is talk about who Clarence Thomas is. See, we tend to think of Clarence Thomas as this kind of outlier. He's nothing like us, and we call him names, and he's a C word. Oh my God, how could he think that way? And I think what we don't understand is that there's a disproportionate number of Clarence Thomases walking among us who believe the same way. They just don't fully own that conservatism. Now, see, I understand Clarence Thomas, but I am not him. In the sense that I believe in the power and the work of transformative government. He does not. So we're going to get into that. But there are a lot of people who believe the same things that he believed, but don't want to call themselves Clarence Thomas. And you are he and he is you. So what I want to do, I want to get into, there's some great stuff about Thomas that we really kind of don't ever talk about because of what he does when he gets on that court. So we don't talk about Clarence Thomas champions black colleges. We don't talk about any of that. We just kind of make people one way, and we don't understand who they are and how to not produce somebody who feels that way, because these people are produced, and they're not just produced by white supremacy. What you'll see when we talk about Clarence Thomas is that we played a role in who he became, and we have to own that as a community. So let's just get into a few quotes just to provide everything I'm saying with a bit of context. Now, just to bring this one up first in terms of Clarence Thomas and HBCUs. As Leonard L. Haynes, this is in 2008, so these positions and all these people have changed and all that stuff. But as Leonard L. Haynes, executive director of the White House Initiative on Historically Black Colleges and Universities, explained, Thomas has played a key role in litigation to support black colleges over the years. In the 1992 case, United States versus Fortis, for example, Thomas voted with the 8-1 majority, finding that Mississippi had not acted sufficiently to dismantle its two-tiered higher education system under equal protection and civil rights grounds. In concurring opinion, Thomas wrote that the policymakers should take care that desegregation's effort do not weaken black colleges. So this is a conservative who is out here trying to strengthen black colleges, and you have to try to figure out, where does all that come from? Who is Clarence Thomas and what is he trying to do? What is your aim? What are you doing? How are you doing it? What are you doing? Who are you, Mr. Thomas? Who are you, Justice Thomas? And how do we convince somebody like that who hasn't even gotten to the Supreme Court yet, right? That there is a space here for you in the ADOS community, that you don't really have to go over there. So let's just go to who, according to Corey Robin, who wrote the book, let's go to who Clarence Thomas is. We're going to go through a few quotes. Please just bear with me. Arguably the most reactionary member of the court, Thomas is also, according to Robin, a bundle of contradictions. His position on affirmative action, for instance, is basically in lockstep with the largely white Republican Party. And yet Robin argues that Thomas has always been a black nationalist with a very coherent, fatalistic view of race in America. And it's that skepticism about progress and the belief in black self-determination that pushed Thomas down the road of ultra-conservatism. So what they're saying is that it's his black nationalism that brought him to conservatism. Now, here's something else he says. Thomas's pessimism about race and politics, as described by Robin, captures a dilemma at the core of American life. If white supremacy is baked into the DNA of America, if it's so deeply embedded in our culture and institution, is there any hope of moving beyond it? Clarence Thomas thinks no. Thomas seems to think there isn't, and it's why he regards every attempt at using law as a tool to redress inequalities as futile. His alliance with a conservative movement that is overwhelmingly blind to these realities makes for a strange marriage. Indeed, it also, oddly enough, aligns him with many progressives who share his grim view of racial progress in America. Now, let me tell you something that's very interesting about this. When you talk about this kind of fatalist view of America, there's nothing to be done. It's very interesting, though, that you're at the Supreme Court. You are a Supreme Court justice, and you are thinking of race as this in this pessimistic way. There's nothing to be done. It's over. And the contradiction of Clarence Thomas, which is the contradiction of a lot of black nationalists, a lot of do-for-selfers, the contradiction here is that you don't understand one key thing. You're talking about America ain't gonna never do this. America ain't gonna never do that. Stop begging, da-da-da-da. You really don't understand that you're supposed to be doing the doing. Like, Clarence Thomas is the best example of that. Clarence, you're a Supreme Court justice. It's not about what America ain't gonna do or what America is gonna do. Like, if you could really show up for the Byron Allen case, that would be great. Because you are America doing the doing. You are the doer now. You are that America that you're talking about is never going to do anything. No, Clarence, it's not that America won't do anything. It's that you won't do anything. You're in a position of power. And instead of holding that power tight and wielding it to the benefit of ADOS, you are kind of abdicating responsibility and abdicating your positionality by saying that America won't do X, Y, Z. But I understand some of what you're saying. I understand some of what you're saying, because part of what you're saying is that America is lying. I kind of agree with some of that, but what happens is that you can't abdicate. You can't, see, the thing is this, you can't be a fatalist and you're on the Supreme Court. Like, that means when somebody comes to you and says, do you want this job? You'd be like, no, I don't believe. See, I don't want to decide on all this stuff, because I believe America is what it is. It's going to be what it's going to be. And I don't even want to be a part of all this stuff that's going on. I don't feel like it. That's kind of what you have to do. But he takes a different position. See, let me just show you this. Thomas assumes that racism and white supremacy is eradicable in America. That means you can't eradicate it. It's going to be here forever. It's a permanent feature of the American condition. And the problem for him with contemporary liberal America, which he thinks really begins with the New Deal, is that white supremacy to a degree changed its spots, but not nearly as much as most people think. I agree with that. White supremacy did absolutely change its spots. Just like we were re-enslaved. You didn't become new, and you didn't become... America did not become some beacon or anything like that. I agree. Re-enslavement every generation. I totally agree with him there. He ain't wrong there. But the question then becomes, if all of this, and we even know when we talk about affirmative action, we even know all of this stuff has been done wrong. It's not being done to our benefit. We understand that. But the question then becomes, what are you going to do to push that needle? And why are you there if you don't believe the needle can be pushed? So let me just go to something else. This is what he believes about the liberals, white liberals, and white supremacy. They perpetuate the conditions of a black weakness. This is what he says about like affirmative action laws that benefit us. They perpetuate the conditions of black weakness and black victimization by making black people dependent. Now, Thomas doesn't object to dependence as such. He thinks depending on white people means depending on a force that's as arbitrary and whimsical as the weather and very dangerous, and ends up weakening black people and destroying the kinds of habits and skills and virtues that black people depended upon and developed over centuries of subjugation and oppression. Here is the problem, though. Even during that period that Clarence Thomas is kind of having this kind of nostalgia about, we were overwhelmingly poor. Only a few people. He knows that he grew up that way. Now, he does believe that the strongest somehow escape, but that's not the thing to build up a community. See, the reason I believe in transformative government is because I've seen it work for other groups. And nobody says anything. Nobody says a word when it works for other people, but for us is, well, we got to get rid of the victimization and how people see, and we got to have it over here, and we got to be stronger, and we see that, yeah, that's not something that really builds us up as a group. We edge out white people in savings and do all that kind of stuff, and you see that if we don't have government, everybody else has government. Like, you have to say it's not a whimsical thing. It's not depending on white people. It's depending on like a government that's our government. Unless you believe that we're going to somehow form our own state or form our own country. And I just don't see that happening. And there's no way to rewind the clock. There's all this conversation about what should have been, what could have been. I'm living right now in 2019. I'm not going to go back to what I believe or anybody else believes what could have been or what should have been. You have to come here now. And it's very odd. You know, I don't have any problem with, intermarriage of races. I don't get into that. But it's very odd that a man who married a white woman has this kind of, he sits around and kind of romanticizes, a segregation to the extent that he does. And that's one of his many contradictions that, I feel like he should integrate. You have a powerful position, and you're not all wrong. I'm not here to say that. I'm not here to do the thing that people do in terms of cheap shots and name calling. You could be a force for that. No, we don't. Nobody knows how this ends up. None of us know how it ends. None of us knows like reparations today or next week. None of us know any of that, right? We don't have a clue. We just know what we got to fight for. And somehow you've decided that you don't want to fight that fight, or you don't want to fight it on these terms. But these are the terms that we have. And you have to understand, it's not always the case that the strongest get out. Sometimes the people who get out are grifters. Sometimes the people who get out of the circumstance are the people who still out their people. Sometimes that's who gets out. Now, everybody who gets out and they're doing wonderful in the world and they're ADOS, you have to ask yourself, am I the grifter? Am I the one who got out because I chose to sell out my people? You have to ask yourself very serious questions. And we go back to this. One thing to understand about Thomas's conservatism is that there's a strong belief in patriarchy. He has said quite plainly that the salvation of the black race depends on black men. Not a family, not the black family, not in coordination. You say that and then like you're here with, how does that make sense? This is one area where his conservatism and black nationalism converge. Now, before I go on, I want to say one thing very clearly. If you aren't recognizing a lot of what exists in Clarence Thomas and a lot of people who claim to be black nationalists, Pan-Africanists, pro-black, a lot of them are saying the same things. We should just have our own and should have done our own thing. And we wouldn't be here. We wouldn't depend on the white man. Clarence Thomas is your guy. You are him. He is you. You have to own that. That is not me. I believe in the power of transformative government. But understand that if you're saying this stuff, you are with Clarence Thomas. You are reiterating everything that he say. You are parroting Clarence Thomas when you say all of this, well, the white man ain't gonna never do nothing. You gotta understand, Yvette, the white man ain't gonna never. You have to understand that's Clarence Thomas. That's the side that you're on. Then you gotta ask yourself, is that the side that you wanna be on? Do you wanna be on that side? Because he says they say it would be too strong. It would be too strong to say that he would like, when they say they're referring to Clarence Thomas. It would be too strong to say that he would like to rewrite the Constitution as if it were a Jim Crow Constitution. But he really does believe in his heart of hearts that black people, particularly black men, flourished under the heavy yoke of subjugation that was Jim Crow. Right? That's what he believes. That's kind of a Jim Crow nostalgia. Now, in terms of segregation, this is what I will say. When integration happened, we lost a lot. We lost a lot of black teachers. Especially, this is one thing I'm going to point to in this conversation. Because what happened, they say, okay, we'll integrate the students. They'll be in the classroom, but the teachers can't be here. So they'll just be taught by white people. So even in terms of how integration happened, it didn't happen right. So even when we go to this, there's another article. So we're going to go to this article and just talk a little bit about this. But let me see if I can find it. There's a part where Clarence Thomas basically goes into what he dealt with, right? When you talk about separatism and affirmative action, and when he talks about going to a segregated school. I think this is it. Well, no, this is something different, but it goes to the same vein. I never worshiped at the altar of integration. This is Clarence Thomas. He declared 5 years ago after joining the court. This was a while ago. As he told Juan Williams, who wrote a profile of Thomas in The Atlantic, the whole push to assimilate simply does not make sense to me. But yet you are who you are and you're married to who you're married to. None of this makes sense. And this is the quote that I was going for here. He said, I am the only one at this table who attended a segregated school. And the problem with segregation was not that we didn't have white people in our class. The problem was that we didn't have equal facilities. We didn't have heating. We didn't have books. We had rickety chairs. All my classmates and I wanted was a choice to attend a mostly black school or a mostly white school and to have the same resources in whatever school we chose. He ain't lied. He ain't lied right there. He did not lie. That's the truth. That's not a lie. That's the absolute truth. But embedded in that truth is a need for us as ADOS to have control. See, part of what happens is that the paternalism is not to say that integration shouldn't have happened, but we should have had a choice. I can be here, I can be there. Right? Because what happened is they made us a contagion to wealth. So it wasn't just that we didn't have a choice. They made it to where we couldn't move. They made it to where we couldn't be Clarence Thomas. I'm sure Clarence Thomas lives in a white neighborhood. I'm sure Clarence Thomas is married to a white woman. I'm sure he is living a very integrated life. ADOS want to have the choice of how to live. Now, we can all choose, but we have been made a contagion to wealth. That's the problem. We should never have been made a contagion to wealth, so we can't go to where we want to go, wherever we want to go. If this is my America, I can go wherever. I don't have a nostalgia for anything. I believe that black schools should have resources. I also believe that we shouldn't be such a contagion to wealth, that we never should be made that to where we can't live wherever we want to live. You don't get to tell me where to live. Nobody gets to tell me just live in this community. Wherever this is my America, I can go wherever I want to go. Who you think you are to tell me where to go? You're at a place. He's at a place where he doesn't like when you look at Clarence Thomas, what you see is a man who doesn't understand the role of government. Right? Government, when you look at government, I don't even want you to think about what people say in terms of their rhetoric. Government is a big pot of money. And all of that money goes to different places. And if you care about your group, you want to find a way or a project or something to get that money to where you need to go. Now, we have a very good reason. We have an enormous racial wealth gap. So what we want to do is use reparations to pour money into that racial wealth gap. And I don't care how long. You pour money into it until we don't have a gap no more. And then you pour a little bit more for good measure. He doesn't understand how economics work. Like, that's what you see. He's caught up in this kind of nostalgia, but he's not the only one. He's caught up in this kind of nostalgia. Well, we had, like you hear it all the time, well, we had this and we had that. Yeah, we should have had the choice. But you're caught up in an idea. An idea is not economics. An idea is not a reality. An idea is just an idea. And I know why you love it, because you used to fish little minnow fish and stuff and enjoy your life. And before you had to move in with your grandparents, you used to fish little crabs and you thought it was wonderful. That's how you lived your life. But that's not how government works. Government allocates resources, and you cannot live in this life without resources. You cannot live in this America without policies that protect you. Now, you have been protected for a long time. Once you became a black conservative, you were very valued commodity by white America. I don't know how you talk the way you talk when you talk about we don't need to depend on white America. We don't need white America. I don't understand all that stuff. How do you talk like that when your whole life is built on conservative whiteness and being buoyed by that? Do you not see this contradiction? There is no life. There is no avenue for you to thrive. Had white conservatives not elevated you and said, you're our guy. Hey, buddy. Hey there, buddy. You're our guy. That's what got you to where you are. So how do you then turn around and say, like, you don't like any kind of integration? Your life doesn't exist without integration. There are no black courts. There are no courts around here just for black people. You didn't try to build any either, did you? You tried to get jobs. You went to the government. You worked for the government. You went Reagan's administration, and you turn around and talk about why would you go to the Labor Department? Why would you do the same reason you did, Clarence? But I see this rhetoric from a lot of people. Why are we asking white people? Why are we asking white dad? You work now. You file tax just like everybody else do. Why are we doing this? You see a sort of in Clarence Thomas, you see a sort of, the best way to describe it is a sort of racial despair. Because you see him saying here, the same, that something that I said that doesn't make sense, because Clarence Thomas was a black nationalist. He liked Malcolm X. And here's what he said. He read the autobiography. He said, I don't see how the civil rights people today, this is Clarence Thomas talking, can claim Malcolm X as one of their own, he said. Where does he say black people should go begging the Labor Department for jobs? He was hell on integrationists. Where does he say you should sacrifice your institutions to be next to white people, yet you sleep next to one? And I'm not criticizing you, Clarence. I'm not opposed. I'm just saying you can't say that, then do that. You can't say that, then do that. Y'all, this is not the same. There's a problem. There is a problem. And I see this problem. The problem is this is not just a Clarence Thomas problem. There are people who don't understand all through this how much they are contradicting themselves. How many people, let me just say this. Show of hands in the chat, fam. How many of y'all see people who say all of the same things that Clarence Thomas says about everything from integration? We're not saying this, that integration was implemented in such a way to inflict a certain level of pain and humiliation on ADOS and take stuff away from us. We're not saying that didn't happen. But how many of us see people who say the same thing that Clarence Thomas said, but really think they're good Democrats? Right? How many of us have heard people utter the same stuff that Clarence Thomas is saying about everything? It's not just integration, what he's saying about begging the white man and all this stuff. We need people to own their stuff. Everybody has to own their stuff. If you go around saying all this stuff every day, and we can criticize, I have my own criticisms of integration and how it was implemented and everything that happened and not giving us the choice to be here or there in the capital. But you still need the capital from the government. And you still need protection from the government. So somebody, you can have your own black community as Black Wall Street did, and somebody can come in there, a white mob come in there and burn it down if the government doesn't protect you. You still, because it's not protecting you because you're going to white people. It's protecting you because you're a citizen. That's what happens to citizens. Citizens are afforded a certain level of protection. It's not complicated. The fact that he's there at this most powerful position, he's abdicating responsibility. But that's what, hey, he's not alone. All of the people who sound like Clarence Thomas, who say, well, I ain't getting involved with ADOS. I'm not going to be, I'm not going to do that because I know the government never going to give us nothing. Just claim it. I am Clarence Thomas. You need to just put your hands up and say you Clarence Thomas, because that's who you are. Everything you're saying is parroting Clarence Thomas, but you think you're saying something empowering. No. You're conservative. Just own it. I am a black conservative. Just go say that. Just go say that. Go say you're a black conservative and go deal with your stuff. Because that's your rhetoric. That's your politics. You got to live with it. And he doesn't believe that anything can be done about race in America. So why are you on the court? If nothing can be done, why are you there? Like, give that to somebody who believes that something can happen. When he was nearly 40 years old, just 4 years shy of his appointment to the court, Thomas set the foundation of his vision in the profile in the Atlantic. There is nothing you can do to get past black skin, he said. I don't care how educated you are, how good you are at what you do. You'll never have the same contacts, opportunities. You'll never be seen as equal to whites. But you're at the Supreme Court, though. Your job is to kind of effectuate that. Your job is to push that in a direction. Now, none of us are God. None of us know what the end will be. But your job is to push in that direction instead of telling me like you have like you have a little globe in your hand of what will be. All of this is an abdication of responsibility. Now, I understand that you're dealt with the cards that you're dealt with. So you don't like affirmative action, Mr. Thomas, Justice Thomas, for a lot of the same reasons I don't. It goes a lot to people it shouldn't go to. And even when it goes to us, it goes to the elite. I'm right there with you in terms of that. But you don't destroy the program because it's not being rendered right. You don't make that kind of judgment, even though that's a fair criticism. How you do what you do is a problem. I understand that the CBC has abdicated their responsibility in terms of crafting policies and pushing policies that are for us. But you don't just say, well, none of it's going to work, so I'm not going to do it. You have to work with the cards that you're dealt. You have to. But when you see part of what we have to do, I see a lot of little fights going on inter-ADOS fights. I hear about them, disappointed in them. And I think we have to get on the same page about who we are and what we stand for. And I think we also have to get on the same page about, it's easy for us. It's easy for us to just call Clarence Thomas a name and not understand. First of all, he's not all wrong. He's wrong about what he does and his response to it. You're not wrong about race per se. You're wrong about how much you romanticize Jim Crow, but you're not all the way wrong, but you're wrong about your approach to it. Your approach is to do nothing. I'm on the court, but I'm not going to do anything because I don't believe anything will change. Why are you here? So the second part about it, though, the second part that we have to deal with is how we played a role in creating Clarence Thomas. ADOS, us. And I say that as a light-skinned person. I'm not boule. I wasn't born into that life. I wasn't born into the black functionaries. I don't even call them elite because it's not really a class. It's a group of Negroes getting ahead. But they were traditionally light-skinned. And I think, from what I am reading and have read and have heard with my own ears from somebody who went to school with Clarence Thomas, right, that he was treated very badly by that group. And let me just read a clip from the New Yorker. His nickname in the schoolyard, in the schoolyard and the streets was ABC, America's blackest child. If he were any blacker, his classmates jeered, he'd be blue. Color was code for class. The darkness of Thomas's skin, along with the Gula Geechee dialect he retained from Pinpoint, was a sign of his lowly status and origins. Clarence had big lips, nappy hair, and he was almost literally black, a schoolmate told Jane Mayer and Jill Abramsons in the 1994 book, The Strange Justice, The Selling of Clarence Thomas. Those folks were at the bottom of the pole. You just didn't want to hang with those kids. You just didn't want to hang with those kids. Understand what that means in terms of, I still think that Clarence Thomas, and he had to, listen, when part of the reason, I don't think Clarence Thomas just doesn't like white elite. I don't think he likes elitism at all. And I think the reason that he doesn't care if everything burns is because he wants the black quote unquote elite and the white elite to all burn, because none of them, and the liberal elite to burn, because none of them did nothing for him. As a matter of fact, they probably made a good bit of his life a living hell. And so I think this is a teachable moment in terms of unity and disunity. I think we have Clarence Thomas and Clarence Thomas votes the way he does for a number of reasons. But I don't think one of the least of those reasons is he believes that the people that, and he's right in the sense that the people who get to take advantage of affirmative action are the people who call him America's blackest child. The people who called him blue or whatever they call him, purple or whatever they call him, these are the people who get those advantages. And he said, nah, I'm shutting it all down. Now, he's doing it the wrong way from an emotional space. But I think you would really have a different Clarence Thomas had he not had that experience. Had he not had these light-skinned people trashing him and calling him America's blackest child and talking about how messed up he was and how ugly he was, I think you will have a different man. Now, he did get to college and start fighting for black rights, but I think what he fell back on, and I've been told, even though he was a part of the Black Student Union in college, I've been told even then he was a part of it, but there were a lot of people within that frame, within that college group, or within black college where he went, who still were kind of like ostracizing him. And so he's had something against the boule for some time. So here's another quick quote. People love to talk about the conflicts. This is Clarence Thomas talking. People love to talk about the conflicts interracially, he told reporter Ken Foskett, who published a biography of Thomas, Judging Thomas, in 2004. They never talk about the conflicts and tensions intraracially. From a young age, the primary divide Thomas had to confront came from the privileges associated with black wealth and light skin. Black wealth and light skin. So you begin to understand, we blame only conservatives for creating Clarence Thomas or whatever, but you begin to understand how we helped create him. You had the black elite, the school teachers, the light-skinned dentists, the doctors, Thomas said. My grandfather was down at the bottom. They looked down on him. Everybody tries to gloss over that now, but it was the reality. Like, understand, if you're still talking about this, you're still bothered by it. And why would you care? Why would you care about affirmative action if you knew, like, a lot of people who get it are Africans and Boule? Gut it. Don't try to fix it. Don't try to make it fair. Gut it. Because, and I don't want anything that comes from it. I don't want to be viewed as less than. He talked about how he was viewed as less than. Everybody viewed him as not getting in on his own merit. And the funniest thing about the stigma of affirmative action is very interesting. Because white women are the biggest beneficiaries. And there's no white women stigma. Right? There's no like, well, get rid of, Clarence Thomas like, well, I don't like affirmative action because there's a stigma for black people when you get it, like you didn't earn it. Well, there's no stigma for white women. And his argument doesn't even make sense, because here's the issue. Here's the issue. Not only is there no stigma for white women, there was a stigma of inferiority for ADOS long before we ever had access to affirmative action. That's just a consequence of racism. So I don't care if you get rid of affirmative action. A racist is going to be a racist all day long. It doesn't change anything. It doesn't make it better. Well, if we get rid of that, no, if we don't have that, I hate the way the white people looked at me when I walked in the room. They won't look at you anyway, Clarence. Even if you had scored the highest score, they would have accused you of having somebody white take the test and sneak it out or something. They don't care. Racists don't care what you think. Racists don't care how you feel. Racists don't care whether they're right or wrong. He's assuming that there's some kind of logic embedded in racism that doesn't exist. How do you not know that? Do you really think that you can change your behavior and therefore make a racist into a non-racist? And the truth be told, we work, even before you talk about college, we work harder. There's a burden anyway just off of being ADOS in America. So we've already worked harder, whether we go to college or not. We've already worked harder and dealt with more. So what are you talking about? Clarence, what are you talking about? Are you all right? But I say that because what happens is we have this man now who I think is just very damaged. This is a person who was marching the streets and then decided he don't believe in the streets no more. He went to Holy Cross. Within months of their arrival at Holy Cross, Thomas and his friends organized themselves into the Black Student Union, where they tempered their aspirations for inclusion with their demands for separation. He's always been on this. The BSU's founding statement called for the admission of more black students, the hiring of more black faculty, courses in black literature and history, and campus events to showcase black artists. They prefaced their demands with a rousing affirmation of black identity. This is Clarence Thomas now doing this thing. We, the black students of the College of the Holy Cross, in recognizing the necessity of strengthening a sense of racial solidarity and group solidarity, being aware of a common cause with other oppressed peoples, and desiring to expose and eradicate social inequality and injustices, do hereby establish the Black Student Union of Holy Cross. Thomas typed the document and was elected Secretary Treasurer. They had some other stuff in the document you want to see? And you can read this article on your own. I'll bring it back up in a second. Rules for the black man. This is who Clarence Thomas used to be. The black man must respect the black woman. The black man's woman is the most beautiful of all women. The black man must work with his brother. The black man wants the right to perpetuate his race. The black man does not want or need the white woman. The black man's history shows that the white woman is the cause of his failure to be the true black man. Now it's a lot very interesting, Clarence. People evolve though. They evolve. I'm not gonna. But I feel like Clarence is still that man, and he's something else is going on. But Thomas read the autobiography of Malcolm X in his first year of Holy Cross. He put up a poster of Malcolm X in his dorm room, and he began collecting records of Malcolm's speeches, which he could recite from memory 2 decades later. I've been partial to Malcolm X, Thomas said in 1987. There is a lot of good in what he says. He also liked the Black Panthers. In college, Thomas believed that the Black Panthers, one of the many groups to claim Malcolm's mantle, offered another way. With their guidance, he helped organize a free breakfast program in Worcester, serving daily meals out of a church to about 50 poor children. He championed the Black Panther leader Kathleen Cleaver and the communist Angela Davis, who were in flight from the American government because of radical involvements and allegations of criminal activity. It's all very interesting. It's all very interesting. But I think one of the things I will say that I believe about Clarence Thomas, I believe that he's very invested in the white gaze. I'm not saying he was then, but when he talks about affirmative action and what people believe, you're very invested in how white people view you and well, people are going to see us that way. And so you talk about, well, I don't want to beg nobody for nothing, but you're begging white people for attention. You're begging white people to see you a certain way. I don't want you to see me as a person who asks for anything. I don't care how you see me. See me how you see me. I just want justice for myself and my people. I don't care how you see me. What does it matter? Why are you so invested in like it increases the stigma? No, the stigma that is on us is because of racism. We haven't done anything to increase the stigma. People are going to see us how they want to see us. So I just don't understand what that means. It doesn't make sense to me. But it does make sense to me kind of that he hates elites. And the funniest thing, I've never heard, like, you know, when we talk about doling out Holocaust payments, I've never heard Clarence Thomas says, no, you can't do that because you'll be viewed as a victim if you take those Holocaust payments. It's the same. It's the same. Why is it, you know, ours is a multi-generational oppression. I'm not going to, you know, we all are deserving. Why is it us that you're like, well, they're going to view you a certain way? And then I come now to close to the end, because what I see with Clarence Thomas is basically kind of like, there's no other way to describe it other than like an angry abdication. Like he kind of feels like he's being revolutionary, but he's not. You can show up for that Byron case. You believe in do for selferism. Black on. Byron Allen stuff is back on. Just him. Y'all got a lot, you know, you could show up for that. You could show up for that and say, hey, this is a black man who did his own thing, and they shut him out. Like, come on, Clarence, redeem yourself. Come on, like this don't make no sense what you're doing. Everything you're saying is kind of cloaked in something that doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. And the mainstream, he says liberalism. See, in his memoir, Thomas notes that what he said. Let me just go back through this. He said in his memoir, Thomas notes that part of the appeal of black nationalism was tied to his sense in the wake of the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr. and Robert F. Kennedy that no one was going to take care of me or any other black person. How many times have you heard that before? White men ain't gonna never do nothing for us and nobody gonna take care of us. If you're saying that, you're a conservative. Just own it. Don't be like, I agree with you, Yvette, but I'm saying, I know the white man. No. If that's how you feel, I need you to own that and own that that's a conservative position. See, clarity is key. Clarity is key. I just need people who are the Clarence Thomases of Black America to own that mantle. You got to own that mantle. You got to go over there. You got to go be Republican or conservative or whatever you want to call yourself. I don't care. You got to go do that though. You can't be over here talking about what's not possible and what government's not going to do. Because over here, we're working for a transformational government. Because over here, we've seen government work for a lot of people, a lot of institutions. It's never worked for us. And it's the only entity big enough to do what needs to be done. That's what happens over here. Now, if you believe what Clarence Thomas believed, that we just got to go back and and we just got to go back to segregation and maybe get some stuff and some loaves of bread and some potato wedges and some peas, then that's your belief. But that's a very conservative belief that in the richest country in the world, developed where everything's already built and we got locked out of building and we're going to go back there. Like but if that's your belief, it's very conservative. Go claim Clarence Thomas. I want you to put him on your shirt. I want you to put him on a medallion. I want you to have Clarence Thomas earrings, because that's who you are. And it's not about disagreeing with everything that Clarence Thomas said. I didn't do that. But it's about understanding that he has, what Clarence Thomas has is a fatalism. He gets some of the stuff right in terms of his criticism of white liberalism, in terms of his criticism of America. He's not all wrong, but the way he reacts to it, the fatalism with which he reacts to it, allows us no pathway to freedom or liberation. And that's not the response that I would expect from a man on the Supreme Court. Listen, all we want as ADOS is for America to do for us what it did for you, Clarence. You had no problem accepting the bounty of white America when they supported you and elevated you all the way to the Supreme Court. But then you're going to tell us what America can't do for us? How does that make sense? Make it all make sense. We want America to do for us as a collective, not white people. We're talking about America. We are Americans. This is our country. We want America to do for us as a collective what it did for you as an individual. You're sitting on the Supreme Court because of America. But you're going to tell the rest of us what America can't do and what America's incapable of. But it got you all the way to the Supreme Court smiling ear to ear, looking happy everywhere you go. But it can't do anything for us. And I know it's in you. Let me just say this. The fact that Clarence Thomas is a person who mentors black kids, especially if they're from bad neighborhoods. So he's just a very conflicted person. And this is a quote. He was talking to a black kid from Brown University, who was off to college. And he asked him, where are you going to college? And he says, I'm off to Brown University. And Thomas frowned. Finally, he said, well, that's fine. But I'm not sure I would have selected an Ivy League school. You're going to be up there with lots of very smart white kids. And if you're not sure about who you are, you could get eaten alive. I agree. It can happen at any of the good colleges where a young black man who hasn't spent much time with whites suddenly finds himself among almost all whites. I'm not saying none of that. I'm not saying it doesn't make sense. What I'm saying is that what are you doing to help that man from the court? What are you doing to help that man from that young man from the perch that you're on? You can't sit around and keep wishing you could turn back the clock. Thomas has admitted to wanting to turn back the clock to a time when we had our own schools. Much of his jurisprudence is devoted to undoing the grand experiment of which he believes himself to be a victim. As he made clear in 1986, I have been the guinea pig for many social experiments on social minorities. To all those who would continue these social experiments, I say, please, no more. See, my problem is that I believe those social experiments that we've had have been led by white people in terms of paternalism. And it's time for us to kind of lead the way in terms of what we think should happen for us. We don't need to be led. We need to be the ones leading this charge. That's what I believe. But I don't believe that the government doesn't have a role. If the government had a role to play in our oppression, and they absolutely did. The government, see what happened in the South in terms of Reconstruction is because the government left, and they left us to the KKK. If you had been there and protected us as citizens, the outcome could have and would have been different. You didn't do that. You abandoned us. We're largely here because of how our government abandoned us. You didn't protect us when we were building up stuff and building up businesses and building up new inventions. We had new inventions and we couldn't patent, we couldn't put a patent on anything. We couldn't do anything. No trademarks for us. All of that stuff, all that intellectual property too got stolen. You needed government protection in that moment. And we still do. Because even if you build all your own stuff in a community, if you are in a position where you can be ransacked by white mobs, what of it? What difference does it make? You can build up everything. How much have we watched on TV about how much stuff that ADOS invented that we couldn't keep because it was stolen from us? It doesn't matter if you build your own community if you don't have government protection. How do you not understand the importance of government and what government is supposed to do for us? See, my thing with Clarence Thomas is that there is no pathway to freedom or liberation. It's just all angry antagonism about what happened to you as a kid or whatever. And I even understand his problem with affirmative action. In terms of one of the things that he says is that affirmative action is kind of protected for like a boule, as opposed to like you could just, if you know the LSAT doesn't bring in diversity and you want diversity, then just get rid of the LSAT, do something else. But you don't want to do that because you want an elite group, right? So I get it, but you have to work to move and change it. You just can't say, well, I'm opposed to it because of X. If it doesn't exist, it doesn't exist for anybody. So, it's all very interesting. It's all very interesting. And I say that to say, as we come to a close of this section of the show, I said it to say, we are the ones, we always talk about nobody's going to do anything. White people aren't going to do anything. It's our job to move that needle. Like, that's what our job is. Our job is to make people do stuff. Like, we're here. Our job is to push and make people do what we know they need to do. We don't get to just talk about what people ain't gonna do and who people ain't gonna be and they ain't gonna never. But if you are one of those people, I need you to just put your Clarence Thomas shirt on and I need you to live it, because that's who you are. You don't believe in the power of government. You're a pessimist. You're very fatalist in terms of all that. Well, live it. That's all I'm saying. So we're gonna go to the phones. I want to hear what you all have to say. I don't know if any of you all have heard any of it or read any of the book. Well, I want to know what you would think about maybe having it as a book club, because I would like to we had this show, but I would kind of like to dissect Thomas a little bit more and try to figure out, like, because we have to kind of prevent this from happening again, and we have to kind of decide also what kind of politics we want. We're kind of scattered in terms of we have a lot of conservatives who are walking around trying to convince us that they're liberals. There's a lot of stuff going on. So we have to figure our way forward and figure out kind of what path we want to be on. And I don't think we've done that yet. So we're going to go to the break for a few minutes actually, and we'll come back and we will have a conversation. All right, fam. We are about ready to go to the phones. About ready to go to the phones. Have your question ready, fam, or your question or comment, whichever. It's all on you. Let me see who we are going to first. We are going to 704. 704. What's your name? Where you calling from? What's on your mind? You there, 704? Hello? Hello?
Hello?
What's going on, 704?
How you doing?
I'm doing good. How about yourself?
Hold on, let me turn the you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Turn it down. You can turn it down.
I'm turning it down now. How you doing? It is an honor to finally reach you guys. Or you. We've been following you guys for a while. Haven't had much time to get in on this topic for tonight. But I sent you a direct message about the opportunity or the possibility of possibly getting the program like the Watson into the judicial system.
The who?
What would be your ideas of that?
The what?
The Watson. You know how they had the Watson in 2011. They had the Watson program on Jeopardy. And it won to be a couple of those panelists on Jeopardy, and I was sent you a direct message about possibly getting that, or what were your thoughts about getting that, pushing that for?
I will respond to your direct message, fam. I'm gonna try to keep the topic on what it is tonight, everybody. I don't want to be rude, but I'm gonna try to keep the topic on what it is. But I will respond to your direct message. Because I don't understand what I'm a little confused. So I'm sure the direct message will have more information. I am going to my next caller. I'm going to 862. 862. What's your name? Where you calling from? What's on your mind?
Yvette, my sister, how are you?
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
I'm doing fantastic. This is Jonathan Edwards. It's been a while since we last spoke.
Yeah, like summer.
A couple times. Yeah, it was the summer. We talked about my grandfather and the shoes that built America.
Mm-hmm.
And since then, he's enjoyed his 94th birthday.
Ah.
And and I just recently relocated closer to him, and I was actually in the yard speaking with him and my grandson while we were out, cutting grass and this and that, and. He sat down and started to cry. And I was like, "Okay, Pop, what's going on?"
Yeah, what's up?
He said, "Well, son, I never got a chance to do any of this stuff with my grandfather because my grandfather was a slave."
Mm.
So the thing that we need to push forward is, forget these Clarence Thomases because they're not rooted in anything. They're not grounded in anything. They don't have any reference points to the realness of the pain and the suffering.
But hold on, fam. Clarence Thomas was, if y'all correct me if I'm wrong, Clarence Thomas knew his grandfather. I think he loved his I think that's part of what pushed him to embrace Malcolm X and things like that, because he because of he talked about how his black grandfather was treated like trash as opposed to the light-skinned people in the community. I think that was part of his driving force, though, right?
Well, I think that's also part of the thing that made him idolize white people. Is that he recognized that there was this power that they wielded. So in one voice at school in the 70s, when it was revolutionary and almost it can almost make you famous to be revolutionary at that time.
Okay.
You could be very popular if you were that outspoken black person on campus, and you did these things that resembled the movement that had came before you. But you weren't really rooted in the blood and the suffering of those movements. You weren't ready to shed any blood for that suffering. You just wanted to aggrandize yourself to these white people.
You
So you wanted to make yourself more popular at school and get favor from the school. You idolize them while hating them at the same time.
Now that ain't a contradiction. That's a contradiction within yourself.
It's almost a duality it's almost a duality we have with the church now that we didn't have before. We're still going to the church and praying and using it as a spiritual crutch, but we're not weaponizing that black church anymore. So I praise Dr. Cosby for what he's done in Louisville. He's got back to that black radicalism, and he's living and dying, and he's going to fall on his sword for what he believes.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think you're right. I think Go ahead. I'm gonna let you finish. I'm sorry.
Well, no, I was just saying that, to wrap my hands and ideas around this. Clarence Thomas ain't never coming home, y'all. Because he done got himself in the White House. He got himself in a white home, almost in the White House. Like, the Supreme Court is almost like being president. It's a lifetime job, and you I think
it's bigger. It's more than 4 years, forever.
Yeah, it's forever.
For as long as you're here on this planet, for as long as your breath in your body.
Yeah. So, he ascended with the rocket boosters of white power, and then he'll tell you what white power ain't gonna do for you. So we turn right back around on that axis again, and now we're looking for somebody to do something for us, but they ain't looking at us as something that they should be focused on. They focused on themselves, and that's when he had the Anita Hill thing, and now he got this white woman, and he's sitting on the perch, and we sitting on the porch.
The Perch and the Porch. That's a book.
Yeah. That's a book. That's a word right there.
That's a word right there. That's a word in the whole book.
My call.
No, thank you, fam. Thank you.
And I appreciate everything you and Antonio have done.
Thank you.
With the conference, I streamed it. I had my wife watching it. We're all on board.
I appreciate it, fam. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. I appreciate you. Thank you, fam.
All right, we love you.
You made a good point. Like, it's the rocket boosters. The whiteness is your life. That's what built your life. And I think you don't believe it. I think you just work for it. No, that they saw you as somebody who could kind of implement what they wanted. It wasn't just like you were necessarily the best at what you do in the room. You were somebody who's going to implement white dominance. You were going to put in place, you were going to maintain in place. I don't care how you explain it. You were going to maintain like white dominance and then say, well, I'm maintaining it because there's nothing I can do about it. That doesn't make a lot of sense. Or you say, well, I don't like the mechanisms with which they're trying to get rid of it. It just doesn't make a lot of sense. In terms of like, you got there and you realize I really like this white life I'm living. This white community, all that, but I'm not going to let you all have it. I'm not going to let you all have a choice of whether or not you're going to access it. Like, you should have a choice of whether or not there should be robust and wealthy black communities and robust and wealthy integrated communities and over here. And we should have our own choice. What we going to do? But it shouldn't be like we have to run away and escape from the black community like it's some kind of jungle. I agree. But like, you did. So I'm going to the next call. I am going to 302. 302, what's your name? Where you calling from? What's on your mind?
Hello?
Hello? What's going on?
Oh, yeah, this is Johnny Mac from Delaware.
What's going on, Johnny Mac?
Yeah, so this is pertaining to the Byron Allen Supreme Court case.
Mm-hmm.
And so November 15th, Comcast and the Charter Company are launching the Black News Channel. So I'm just a little bit concerned that maybe we aren't totally prepared for what could be a propaganda assault, or just, you know what I'm saying? Like, this is going to be a huge network. So how do you think us as a group can prepare for that?
Well, I mean, that's so close to I don't even think it's so close to like, Well, first of all, even when you look at all these channels, like they're not black-owned channels, so I don't even understand what people are talking about. Like we still have to, but not only are they not black-owned channels, because what we're talking about is whether or not part of the Byron Allen lawsuit for me is like whether or not we're able to be owners, not whether or not white people can give us content, right? Whether or not we are able to be owners. So even if you launch the black news channel or whatever, like the question is still like we're not owning stuff. There was an era there was an era in America that built a whole bunch of owners, and those owners are still passing down stuff to their kids and giving their kids the capital to do new stuff in Silicon Valley and all kinds of stuff, and we didn't have access to that. So regardless of whether they launched that or not, the fact of ownership and black ownership, ADOS ownership in America, and what locked us out for the most part, and how Comcast locked Byron out still remains to be the same thing. It's still intact. I don't think we fall for it. I don't think we fall for anything like that.
So I agree there, and that's essentially what I was getting at. So if you read their mission statement, it's basically getting at this is going to be black targeted, for black people, by black people. So what I kind of just want to, make people aware that they are coming out with this, and it will have a black face on it. But as you said, it will not be a black mind behind it.
I appreciate it. Thank you, fam. I appreciate you calling in and to give us that little heads up. And let me just say something, fam. I always understand that black targeted and black owned are two different things. Magic Johnson got a whatever channel. What is that? Aspire. All these people got channels and stuff, and they're tell him to produce the paperwork, Magic, about how much you own of that channel. All these black targeted is not black owned. That's kind of like we're going to extract something. We're going to have a bunch of ads. We're going to have a whole bunch of stuff, but it's not going to be black owned. It's just going to be black targeted. And we're not going to let them, we're not trying to really deal with any black person who owns stuff. We're just trying to target stuff and extract. We're not going to let you have a piece of this pie. We're not going to have a black community owning stuff. You're just going to have to, we're just going to come take stuff. That's what we're going to do. So I'm going to the next caller. I'm going to 804. 804, what's your name? Where you calling from? What's on your mind?
Hi, this is Marcus. I'm calling from Virginia.
Hey, Marcus, what's going on?
How you doing?
Pretty good.
I have been listening to you for over a year, and your plan to move ADOS forward. And I read a lot of books. And tonight, I wanted to call in. This is my first time calling in. And I wanted to kind of touch on something I read about in your belief that government is pretty much the best way to take us forward. I read a book called Winners Take All. And it really reminded me of Clarence Thomas and the problems we face today.
Okay.
Basically, the upper class make the lower class feel like government is not the way. Meanwhile, the upper class lobbies and pretty much try to extract as much power as they can from government while making the lower class people feeling like they don't need it. That's not the method. And it kind of works like against our own best interest. So I just wanted to kind of touch on that and say, like, from everything I've been reading, I 100% agree with you. That's the best way to move forward. And also, I wanted to get your feedback, like, about, you talk about Clarence Thomas and how he was treated when he was in school. I know a lot of black people like to talk about the crabs in the barrel mentality, but they really don't touch on how a lot of crabs act when they make it out of the barrel. Like how we taunt, how we make fun of, how we treat people who we consider less than once we find some self-confidence about ourselves. So I just wanted you to kind of touch on that. Like, I feel like that's kind of what created Clarence Thomas and other people. And I think what you touched on tonight is important, so we don't create more Clarence Thomases.
Thank you, fam.
When other black people make it, they try to look out for us because they've been loved and treated well by us. So,
thank you, fam. That's
thank
remarkable.
You for all you do.
No, thank you. That was a great comment. Like, I think that's, I think, oh, dang it! He was saying something I didn't, but anyway, part of what he said was so powerful, because you don't have community if you are making fun of and mocking and diminishing someone, right? So I don't think we really understand what the boule has wrought, right? We talk about the boule a lot, and we talk about what they do and how they think they special and how they took everything and they didn't do politics. But I don't think we really understand, like, I call them black functionaries. I don't even call them black elite because there weren't enough of them. I call them black functionaries. But if you want to call them elite, whatever. I don't think we really understand, like, see, because the thing is, what you want with affirmative action, here's what Clarence Thomas has a point. What you want is, you want to get black people in there. What we're doing is, like, we're getting non-ADOS people in there, and then we're getting boule in there. And these are the people who are least likely to reach back and help the ADOS poor. These are the people who are careerists, who are getting in there, getting their affirmative action, but are the least likely to reach back. And that's why Clarence Thomas has a problem with it. Now, I have a problem with how he deals with that. What do you do with that? You're doing the wrong thing with it, right? But I understand what you're saying. I understand what the caller is saying, because what happens is we create more Clarence Thomases by the boule kind of making other ADOS feel less than. It can happen in a number of ways, though. We have a number of different groups, disparate groups. Now, this was then, that can make other ADOS feel bad or less than. And part of what has to happen is we have to have cohesion. If you don't have that cohesion, what happens is, when that person who was minimized and mocked and made fun of, when they get power, what they do now is they weaponize that power. And they say, you know what? I don't really care about this group right here. This boule group, they treated me like trash. I don't care. They treated me horribly, and I don't care anymore. And I think the only way you deal with that caring is for us to become an actual community of people who try our best to do right by each other. That's all you can do, is try your darndest, like, to not diminish someone else, because you never know what you shouldn't do that anyway as a good person, but you never know what that person is going to become, right? So you never know what that person is going to become and who that person is going to be in their life. So you have to, even if you don't know that, I would say do it. My whole motto is that I'm not more than anybody else, and I'm not less than anybody either. I approach everybody with sameness. We are the same. I'm not more, I'm not less. So you're not gonna make me feel bad, and I'm not gonna feel superior. We right here. I think we have to do that, and I think we really haven't come to terms of. I don't think we've come to terms to, like, how much damage the boule has done, and how they've diminished people. Because Clarence Thomas is the only one. I'm sure there are a bunch of people in a bunch of different positions doing a bunch of stuff because they feel a certain way about how they were treated by light-skinned elite black folk. Right? And that's a problem. And we are in a position now to correct that and become a cohesive group. And I think we have to do that. That's part of our charge. I'm going to the next call. I'm going to I'm going to 850. What's your name? Where you calling from? What's on your mind?
Hey, Yvette, how you doing?
I'm doing good. How about yourself?
This is me, the one that was nervous not that long ago.
I remember, like last week.
Junior from Panama City.
Okay, what's going on? What's on your mind today? Tonight.
Okay. I wanted to talk about, it was one other caller that called in and that was talking about, like, how y'all was talking about Clarence Thomas.
Mm-hmm.
To be honest, I think it's the baby boomers. Because tonight, I talked to my auntie about, like, okay, basically, if she was to have to vote today, who would she vote for, right?
Yeah.
I know this not on exactly what everybody is talking about right now, but so I just had to ask this. Who would you vote for today?
Oh, if I had to vote right now?
Said,
me?
Huh?
Who are you talking about? Me or her? Okay.
Not you. Not
Ooh,
you.
child.
My auntie. She's a baby boomer.
Okay, go ahead. Mm-hmm.
And
Joe Biden.
She clearly stated, what's his name? Biden.
I knew.
And I said, why? Because she talking about Trump said he was an ass kisser. So I'm sitting there like, okay, auntie, really, truly, this is not how you vote. Like, first of all, and then I had to try to describe it to my grandma. I love them dearly, and I want them to understand that. First of all,
I said, of course you love them. I understand.
Yeah, I try to describe it to them because, first of all, okay, like I'm a millennial.
Okay.
And I still got, if I'm blessed to see a long life, you know,
yeah.
I still got quite a bit of years to live. And not only am I thinking about me, I'm thinking about generations to come. You feel me?
Yeah, I understand.
So I'm trying to get them to see it in that way. But it's hard because, you know, people don't want to relinquish, you know, well, not only relinquish, but they don't want to sit there and get the understanding that, hey, y'all kind of voted wrong back in the days, so let's correct this problem and let's do it the right way now. Like, and I try to get them to understand, you know, how to go about it. Like, my grandma is a fellow ADOS. Like, my auntie is too, and all of them, but they don't understand ADOS like my grandma. So I'm trying to, because my grandma sit there and did research and all of that. She even tracked our lineage back to, you know, our granddaddy that was a slave that escaped and all of that. But I'm trying to get the rest of the family to get on code. Like, to get the understanding, like, hey, if we're going to do this, we got to do it right from now on. Because y'all got generations that's coming up that y'all do not want them to be, how did you put it? Steady on the economic cliff. Economic cliff.
Exactly.
But it's hard for them to see it because, you know, I guess because I'm young, you get what I'm saying?
Well, but it's another thing. That's another thing, Carl. Let me just say one thing quick. Part of the reason they want to vote for Biden is because these people have always been comfortable, right? So they're voting for the status quo to kind of protect their comfort, as opposed to voting for or considering writing in or whatever based on what is good for us. They are just like, the status quo has been real good for me. I have lived a decent enough life, not a perfect life, but I'm here. That's a lot for an ADOS person to be able to say. So I think they're protecting like their own life now, like with Social Security and chilling out at the crib or whatever. Go ahead.
And I'm glad you said that because I said the same thing. And it bothers me and some of my other peers. But then I also have peers, like how y'all was talking about interracial relationships. I have certain peers. I want to touch on that real quick.
Okay.
Some of them, they use the phrase as, okay, some of my ADOS male friends, they want to sit there and say, they want to use the term, a white girl is my, what's the term that, what is Superman, kryptonite. They want to say, a white girl is my kryptonite. Okay, what was kryptonite to Superman?
Yeah, you're right. Well, I'm not. Yeah, go ahead. I'm gonna let you finish, Carl.
No, I ain't trying to get you to get on that. I'm just saying.
I'm staying off it.
Yeah, that's what I try to get them to understand. And
yeah, that's a bad analogy. That's a real bad analogy.
Thank you. And I try to get them to understand that what they're saying, because terminology is everything. And I had to learn that over the years. But your terms that you're using, bad, bro. Like, I'm trying to get everything together because it was.
You did good. You fine. You did good.
Okay, and then I want to ask you this though before I forget this part. Okay, that book. Where do we go from here? Where can I find that book?
Might be at your library. You might have to find it at the bookstore. But email me at editor@breakingbrown.com.
Okay. And put it in all caps?
Yes. I called about the book. All caps.
Okay. Okay.
That's the
Okay.
only way. That's my way of knowing that I owe you
Appreciate
something.
Uh-huh.
I said that's my way of knowing that I owe you something, or I promise you something if you put it in all caps. So I appreciate the call.
Okay.
Thank
I
you.
got you. But I'm trying to really get them to understand that, you know.
Well,
if
slowly,
we gonna do
slowly,
this, let's do it right.
slowly, caller. I appreciate you calling in. We're gonna go to the next one, but I appreciate slowly. Take it slow. You can't take it too fast with the people. You can't take it too fast, and sometimes they won't come. Sometimes you have to leave them alone and then come back later. Sometimes you have to just take a break from them because sometimes they be too stressful. I don't want. So I'm going to my next call. I'm going to 617. 617, what's your name? Where you calling from? What's on your mind?
Hey, Yvette, it's Reggie from Boston. How
What's
are
going
you?
on, Reggie? I'm pretty good. I can't complain. What's up with you?
Hey, I'm good. And listen, Clarence X. Like, when I saw the title, I was thinking to myself, like, this is way out of left field. Like, what the hell is he talking about? Like,
Yeah.
how do you put Clarence and X together?
Mm-hmm.
But it goes back to one of the reasons that I really love and appreciate you and love and appreciate Tone,
Thank you.
because y'all are very deep and nuanced thinkers. And in this discussion and other discussions as well, you're really forcing the rest of us to be deep and nuanced thinkers.
Oh, thank you. I
Like,
appreciate it.
you either got to think and study and read and think deeply, or you just got to get out the way. And I kind of feel where you're coming from in terms of the timing of this with the law of 1866 coming to the Supreme Court, and perhaps how these nuanced points can kind of serve as a thumb screw or an Achilles heel for Clarence Thomas. And, you know, especially in terms of the DC advocacy, you know, shout out to the people that are going to be, you know, demonstrating in front of the Supreme Court.
Absolutely.
Hopefully we can take the points that Yvette's talking about, and if the media approaches you or somebody else approaches you, that you bring these points forward. And even though you yourselves can't or may not be able to bring an amicus brief, you may have the opportunity to be that amicus brief at the steps of the Supreme Court. You see what I'm saying, Yvette?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and in terms of, you know, with Clarence Thomas, you know, like I said, I appreciate the show, and one of the contradictions that I really appreciate you for bringing into the light, that when you look at Clarence Thomas and even, you know, other black men, you know, when we speak in terms of or do for self, it's not necessarily limited to black men, but I just see a preponderance of black men, you know, spouting these ideas. But you have, you know, people talking about, you know, black fatalism and black nationalism, and I got to get my own and have my own. Yet to get your own in the context of America, you have to go to the government for permission for everything that you're trying to do. It doesn't matter if it's black business. If I want to bank black, I need to build a black institution.
Absolutely.
I need to build a house.
Absolutely.
I need to buy a house, or I'm going to have my own black city or my own black enclave. You know, I want a nation within a nation, you know, whatever. Everything you're talking about within the context of America, you still got to go to government.
Absolutely.
Like, even tying it into the X thing, even when Malcolm X, when there were certain times when he talked about reparations, one of his visions for reparations, you know, he demanded that the government give us a separate state by ourselves, but he also demanded that because of the damage that you've done, that you have to fund that for 20 years. Like, y'all can Google that and go back and see when he answered those questions. And it's just so interesting, you know, like you said, with some of us as black men, you know, we say we got to build our own, we do all this. You know, you have, you know, boys talking about stocks, and then Jay talking about tier 2 funds. all of that is regulated by government. But here you have these people saying, "Oh, I'm gonna get my own," but your own is by the government, and you wouldn't be here without government. And back to Clarence Thomas in terms of how he thinks and how he's evolved, or should I say devolved. One of the points you brought up, and one of the points I keep coming back to, especially in terms of the recent conference, is the love. And I'm thinking to myself, what happened, to this man in terms of,
a lot.
Granted, white supremacy is the ultimate contradiction, the damage from slavery, but I'm also thinking, what happened to him as a black man? What happens to us as black people? What happens to black women? Because what I see is you have, black women, or let me start with black men running to some crazy form of conservatism, but then on the other hand, you have black women and even some LGBTQ folks run into some wild variant of intersectionality theory.
Yeah.
But the common thread between both of those sides is that whether they go to the right or to the left, both of these groups of people share a common thread in that they both engage in the politics of revenge. They take their eyes off white supremacy. They take their eyes off slavery.
Wait a minute, Reggie. Wait a minute. You got to say that again. The politics of revenge, because you see that not just in Clarence Thomas, and I'm gonna let you finish, but you see that a lot in LGBT, in the black LGBT community. Like, well, I was treated bad by the black community. So what happens is there is a group of people like who are engaging in the politics of revenge. Oh, that's a great phrase. Go ahead, Reg. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and I totally agree with you. You have the LGBT, and you have maybe some of the feminists engaging in that politics of revenge. And also, just to bring a little balance, I'm not saying you're not doing this.
No,
but
absolutely.
In terms of when black men are damaged in the same way, we engage in that politics of revenge. But I'm kind of with the school of thought in terms of Tommy Curry, in terms of social dominance theory. The only reason that black men can't express that structurally is because, in terms of, colonialism, they want to take out, the men first. So that's the only reason that we can't wreak havoc on community and politics in the same way that the women and the LGBTQ people do. But it's the same core issue. It's like, I'm taking my eyes off white supremacy, and I am going to demonize the same black people that hurt me.
Yeah.
And when you look at the talking points, whether it's from black men, from black women, from black LGBTQ, they, like, all of them engage in the same talking points that came out of the racist social science of the 19th century. And in terms of me personally, what grounds me, and again, this is why I appreciate you and I appreciate Tone, because y'all kind of reinforce that, is that my love for black people and kind of the wiggle room I give so many people to kind of work out their issues is like I'm grounded in the data.
Yeah.
If there are more black men incarcerated than there are more than women on the entire planet, there is a certain nuance and compassion that I'm going to have for black men when they express anger and frustration. And if the incarceration rate for black men is the same as the eviction rate for black women,
absolutely,
there is a certain nuance and compassion that I'm going to have for the black woman.
Absolutely.
There is a certain compassion that I'm going to have for the black single mother, because
absolutely,
you locked the father of her children up. You shot and killed the children, the father of her children. You locked the father of her children out of economic inclusion.
Absolutely.
And I really appreciate
you for this, because we really need to unpack this in terms of, you know, the bottom of the bottom in terms of black people. Now, when you get to a certain level, you know, like Clarence Thomas or a Condoleezza Rice, I have no quarter for you. I'm chopping your head off. I'm probably whooping your ass in the street if I see you. But now, I just wanted to kind of second, you know, the idea that you put out there in terms of, you know, the book club, perhaps that we should put this book that you suggested up there, and perhaps, you know, even a parallel. I don't know how it would work in terms of maybe a dual book club or one right after the other, but maybe we should throw in something like maybe Michelle Wallace's Black Macho and the Myth of the Superwoman, because when you look at Black Macho and some of the works that surrounded that, and the scholars and the gender scholars that followed that, you kind of get to the root of that animosity, you know, in terms of black men towards black women towards black men.
Oh, so put them together, Reg. Okay, all right.
It would be a good long-term project for us to work on, because we really need to do some deep work. And again, I think about these things, but I wasn't really thinking about it on such a high level, to where those implications go all the way up to the Supreme Court in terms of Clarence Thomas. So again, I appreciate you. I appreciate Tone Talks. I appreciate the ADOS family. Let's get it. Come on.
Oh, appreciate it. Thank you, Reg. I mean, thank you, Reggie. As always, Reggie. I appreciate your insights. You know, that goes without saying. I think my computer froze up. But let me just say that it just did what it just shut down. I just do what you want to do then, I suppose. But you know, the thing I want to say is, I don't have any problem with that. I think Reggie put something forth which is very important, which is, how do we deal with getting to the roots of this, you know, anti-black maleness, black men ain't blah blah blah, and this anti-black womeness, black women ain't blah blah blah, and the intersectionalism on this side, and then the Clarence Thomas is on this side. I mean, in terms of like his animosity and I gotta write the politics of revenge. The politics. I gotta write that down. I didn't write that down. The politics of revenge. Yeah, I think we gotta deal with that on both sides. Because one thing that has to happen is that we have to neutralize it. Like, we have to do something about it. We can't have a community as if we have these people who are just going out here and engaging in the politics of revenge in a way that is very damaging to our attempt to be a cohesive community that's moving forward for the benefit of ADOS, that is damaged by these people who go out and engage in the politics of revenge. And it's really about you and what you went through. It's really not about the law or whatever. So we have to find some kind of way to kind of deal with that and neutralize that and become a community. So I do think that might be a plan. I do think that might be something we got to deal with. So I thank you, Reggie, as always, for coming through with the knowledge and the insights. I appreciate it. We're going to go to the next call. I'm going to go to about 3. Try to make them quick because the queue is always full. So try to make them as quick as you can, if possible, and so we can get through them. And I want to get to as many people as I can. So I am going now to 702. 702, what's your name? Where you calling from? What's on your mind?
Hello, Yvette. This is you named me Charlie, so I stick with it, Charlie.
I remember your name, Charlie. your name's still Charlie.
Oh yeah. Oh, I'm all right. How you doing?
I'm doing pretty good.
Good. I love what Reggie was saying. He's right. The thing about Clarence is that when I'm familiar with the material that you went over about Clarence Thomas, because I studied Clarence Thomas intently when he began to expose himself. Well, as soon as he came out on the scene, as soon as he was chosen, because I couldn't figure out why he was being chosen. Mm-hmm. And then as I saw it, as he was revealed over time with the whole the Anita Hill thing and his proclivities towards pornography, which have been pretty much proven by other rumors, and the treatment of other black women who worked for him over time. You pretty much knew what he was about, and when you read it and you read about his history and how he was brought up, I was hard on Clarence, but then after a while I just had to feel sorry for him because I understood exactly what that was. I've seen that happen before, and like you said, in the black community, we create these people, and white supremacy chooses to put them in these positions because they understand that that this hatred exists within them, and they can use that. Clarence is a tool. He's a tool that they decided to use because they saw within him the things that he would do. I think that and Carla brought up an interesting thing. Reggie brought up an interesting thing when he said Condoleezza Rice. I don't have the same kind of animosity about Condoleezza Rice because when I see Condoleezza, I see someone playing a different game. I see someone who is actually, with Clarence, I see this hatred. With Condoleezza, I see fear. I see someone hiding. It's painful to me because these are people who should have been my mentor models, and it's very painful to see all of them in these positions of just damage and pain and agony, really, and it's hurtful. I don't think you can talk about Clarence Thomas without talking about Laney Grenier, because Laney was such those of us who were paying attention when we saw Laney Grenier, she's still a hero to me and a hero to most of the people who saw her.
I've talked about her on the show too. I have her books. Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, I know. I know you have. And Laney is someone who, thankfully, I'm glad you did that because Laney's someone who's being lost to history. But it's beautiful. Her writings and the things that she said at that time, and the way she was sold out by Bill Clinton. All that stuff is a major part of our history, and also her story, the story of what created Laney Grenier. It was the mistreatment of her black father. That was what caused her to be the person that she was. He was a person. I know you know the story about how he was offered a scholarship. When he got there, they saw that he was black, and they decided, well, we can let you be the elevator operator or janitor or whatever. And he took that and just had to suck that up. So when you look at what produced people, and it's still producing people. I mean, you still see it happening right now. We have to address those issues in terms of that, in terms of understanding where this pain comes from, because it constantly will be used against you. I know
you're exactly right. Let me just interject one thing though before you get off Lonnie. She was also one of the people, and she's not like, she has an immigrant story. I forget what side, I think, or something. But like, she was also one of the people who said that America is replacing ADOS with immigrants who look like us because they don't want to fix us. She was one of the people who said that too, and nobody wants to really give credit to where that came from. So I'm gonna let you finish. I'm sorry.
She was an incredible figure that we were cheated of because of this thing, because somebody saw it and said, "Oh my God, no, we can't let that come through." But that thing that he talked about, like with Clarence in particular, that self-hatred. Which funnels around and spins around and becomes hatred of black people. And when they see that and they tend to use it and twist it up. I mean, I understand everything you said about Clarence Thomas, about how he believed. I understand from a logical, emotional way, I understand how he ended up where he ended up. I don't agree with it, but I understand the psychoses that he has is really twisted.
Yeah, I understand it too.
Never been allowed.
Yeah.
Is somebody who should never have been allowed towards in a position of power because he's a sick man. I mean, seriously, I'm not even being just flippant. I'm saying he's truly sick. You can see it in the contradictions in his personal life, professional life. You can see it in the contradictions of his decisions on the Supreme Court. You saw he would say things that just wouldn't make any sense. I mean, any logical or legal sense. I mean, when you see, it was like insane when he did speak out, and usually he just sat there submissive to the conservative wing of the court and just went along with it like he was, a slave. Because in his mind, he probably was never their equal. He never felt that he was. It's societal, in a societal sense, he never felt he was their equal, and so he just sat there. It's a horrible, horrible story, really. And I keep waiting for. I don't want to be. I hate to be this way, but I keep waiting for his story to end. I'm being nice about that, because I think that chapter needs to be closed, because it's such a horrible chapter of our history, and actually America's history, because our history is America's history, and it's something that should never have been done. Placing that man there with everything, all the baggage, both psychological and I say legal, because he should have been prosecuted for that stuff, but that's okay. Not just for Anita Hill, but for the treatment of the other black women that work for him as well. It was disgusting. But if we are going to move forward, we are going to have to address the skeletons in our closet, because those skeletons created him. They're creating people right now. And the caller before, when he mentioned the thing about the politics of revenge are not just on a political scale, they're on a personal scale. People personally are doing that because they seek out this revenge because their self-worth was never valued. Was never given value by their parents or their community, and so they seek out this revenge of, oh yeah, now I can finally, if I get into a position of authority, I can finally flex out on this and prove to people that I'm somebody by belittling them. And this is a dangerous, dangerous game that I see being played all the time. I still see it being played. I still see black people being placed in positions of power and flexing out on black people who are, and it's really sad, because you're talking about ADOS. So when you get into a position of power over ADOS, you can damage them just by a flick of the wrist when you're in a position of power, because our existence is so tenuous.
Yeah, mosquitoes.
Like you said, we're living on a thread.
Yeah.
And so you just do something that the wind blows and it destroys us. And I've been in those positions where I've lived in a car with my children and my wife. And I should never have been in that position, but I understood. Luckily, I was with a woman who understood, and we understood why we were in that position. We were in that position with college degrees.
And you weren't blaming each other. That's the key.
No. We understood the situation. And that's a rare, tough thing. But you have to understand, and it's tough. Don't get me wrong. I'm still working through issues with people who I grew up with my parents and relatives. You're still working through the idea that, these things happen not as a consequence. Don't get me wrong. They share some blame in that, but I see the overarching structure that created some of that. It's not all them. Because a lot of that was just the overarching structure of America and white supremacy that created the system in such a way that they behaved the way they behaved.
You said it right, fam. The overarching structure. That's what you got to do. Like, y'all are killing people in your house. Like, you and I'm not saying physically. You destroying their whole spirits.
Yes. Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. Sometimes it is physical. That's the sad part.
Yeah, that's true.
It becomes physical. It's emotional. It's psychological. It's like I was telling my mother-in-law. I was talking to her one time, and she was making these weird comments, and I was saying, well, don't you? It was sort of like she was beginning to blame me for like some things. This is a whole whatever. I won't go into all that, but I had to explain to her. I said, well, wait a minute. I'm someone. I speak like this. I've gone to these schools. I've seen these people. I've interacted with them, and I would give her instances of this is what happened. This is what happened. I understand you don't know because you came from an era where you really weren't integrated truly. She came up. She was lucky to get into that, as Tone says, on that boomer train.
Yeah.
And she was able to get in on the back end of that. She's older than that. She was able to get in she was able to actually get in on the front end before it was even created. And so she was able to exist in what I call the token positions, those tokenism positions that they created for black people. Those are the ones you pick up black enterprise, and you would see those people with the jobs, and they were all black jobs. Is what they were like the vice presidents of diversity and the executive vice presidents of human resources and inclusion and all that. And you have page after page after page of these jobs that was generated by corporate America to fit those people. And I can tie that back to Clarence too, because that's part of what was going on there. They hijacked the ideal of affirmative action, and they turned it into that. They turned it into this weird tokenism and this weird leveraging of these black damaged people to be not just gatekeepers, but overseers of the rest of us. And it's really messed up because when you call them out on it, they would say, well, it's jealousy, it's crabs in a bucket. It's like, no, it's not jealousy or crabs in a bucket. It's like you said with Clarence. You're in a position, you're supposed to be helping me. You're supposed to understand my position. You come from ADOS. I'm not talking about the immigrants, I'm talking about the ones before. You come from ADOS. You're sitting there as a vice president in the room, or vice president on the Supreme Court in the executive suite. You're supposed to be making some change up there. You're not there on your own free will. You're on there on the blood of Martin, on the blood of Malcolm, on the blood of Medgar Evers, all that blood that was spilled. They got you there, and you're sitting there in that chair just reaping that like, well, I earned all this. You didn't earn any of that. That was bought with blood. That was bought with not just blood, not just
and it was bought with people who fought for government to do right by our people, right? Like for the most part, like what are you doing? Like what are y'all doing? We're not citizens here. What are you doing? We're supposed to be citizens.
That's right. And it wasn't just the blood of those people that we all know. It was the blood of other people too. It was the blood that my uncle spilled in the streets. I mean, when they had protests in the streets, and I'll never forget. I was a little kid, and they had these. He basically went out there. So my father used to laugh about it. Oh yeah, your uncle was out there in the streets doing that stuff. He went out there in those streets because he said this is not right. He went out there. There were other people like my father sitting at home. I'll say that, sitting at home, reaping the benefits of those sacrifices of those people. My mother-in-law as well, sitting at home, reaping the benefits of people who were out there in the streets, out there protesting, out there doing these things, and they would just sit back. It was just typical. I mean, it's happening right now. It's happening right now with this movement. You're gonna win. We're going to win this. And the other people are going to sit back. I don't feel any animosity about that because that's always the way it is. That's always the way it is. It's always going to be.
Well, let me tell you something, Carla. I feel some animosity about it, and I think King did too. Because in the end, we'll talk about from Community Chaos. He talked about like everybody's blaming me for us not getting more, but not enough of y'all showed up. Like, see, the thing is, that's what people love to do. Like, we could like what we get will be in direct proportion to how many people show up. And a lot of people just want to say, like, well, I'm just going to sit here and see how it turned out. We'll see. The conference was nice, and they getting some stuff moving. We're going to see. No, I'm tired of that. Like, you benefit. Show up. And I understand what you're saying, Carl. It only takes a critical mass. But good God Almighty. Like, you would consider we're going over a cliff. Show up. Why are you like this?
Yvette, it's going to be. I know you got to keep it strong, Yvette. It's going to be a critical mass. It's not going to be a large group of people because you're looking for a huge change in this culture. You're not going to get a lot of people who can believe in that. You're not going to get a lot of people who are steadfast in that. You actually don't want a lot of people because you start to blur the message. They start bringing all kinds of other garbage up in there. You want it to be focused. You want that critical mass. And you want to move forward with that. And those people will be. You're actually luckier now because of what you got. Because King and them, that was a very small, insulated group. It really was. Yes, you had Southern. It was all that little religious little clique right there. This is broader. I'm loving seeing this, and I'm really loving seeing what I'm seeing with the internet and what I'm seeing socially in terms of people actually saying ADOS and having speaking points and actually understanding and not falling, as they would say back in the day, not falling for the okie doke because they've been educated and they know better, and so that's one reason why we were on the presidential stage because it's like, wait a minute. We got to address this because these people are bringing real stuff here, and to talk about tangibles and to talk about not giving us, not trying to just push us off with some little BS. I mean, I'm loving that. I'm loving that kind of strength and knowledge base and fortitude that in the past.
Yeah, let me just say this before you go, Carla. There was a thread. I don't even think I remember the thread. It was like day before yesterday though. There was a thread. Was somebody was like, well, I think it was the CBC, maybe the CBC. I don't remember which thread it was. Like, black people are doing okay or something like that. Like all the way down the thread were charts, not just like you or whatever. It was just charts all the way down the thread, just charts, just killing that argument, just killing it, just gutting it. And I was like, that's us. That's what we do. We do the data, and everybody was in there with a different chart. Boom, 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 boom. That's it. You can't argue with that. What are you talking about? A black middle class or whatever. Whatever you were saying. Like, are you crazy? So I agree with you. Like it's not just, we're not making rhetorical arguments. We're hitting everybody hard. So I do agree with you on that. We deserve a pat on the back and a popsicle.
Yeah, you do. you're doing it, and I'm loving it because this is, and I'm going to say this. I hate to say it, but typically this is the kind of reaction or the type of action. Let me say reaction. The type of action I've seen from other groups when stupid things are said or done to them.
Yeah.
This is the kind of action I see. They would come forward. You see people come forward with knowledgeable arguments and knowledgeable retorts, and they have action points. This is what we've needed forever, and I'm seeing it now, and I'm loving this because I'll tell you right now, I said before, I'm older than you, Tom, so I've been in those rooms with those elders, quote unquote, and had these conversations, and they just sit there like, oh, well, because they'd already gotten, like you said, the butter biscuit, and so they're sitting there not listening to what I'm telling them about how we were struggling because they were already okay. They already had the butter biscuit. They're already in the room. They're like, hey, just work hard, you'll get one too. And it's like, to see this action, we didn't have this kind of forum. To see this kind of action and pushback on this just stupid, immoral crap that's been going on for so long. I mean, like I told you before when I called, I have so many stories of pain and hardship from people not in my family and people that I know, that my stories of pain and hardship, I don't even like to talk about them that much because they're nothing compared to some of that stuff. It's like Farrakhan said when he said that whole thing about stories that would make a brass monkey cry. He's right. There are stories that are horrible stories that I know people have gone through, and it's just this is a level of misery. And I'm not even talking about. I'm not even going back all the way to the past. This is like Ta-Nehisi Coates said. We can talk about contemporary. We can talk about my father and grandfather, how they were mistreated and the things that were taken from them.
Yeah, we ain't got to go way back. We ain't got to go way back to 1600s, 1700s, 1800s. We can go right here.
This is real stuff. And so you know what? I've been talking too long. I want other people to get on here.
No, I appreciate it, family. It was a great call. I appreciate you. That was an excellent call.
My prayers are with you. My prayers are with you. And I want you to remain strong. And like I said, the numbers are never going to be as big as what you want. I know that. But that critical mass is going to be something else. This is unlike anything we've seen in a long time.
I agree, fam.
It's going to be really something else.
I agree, fam.
You take care.
You too, and I appreciate the call, fam. That was a wonderful call, and I appreciate you calling in. That was a wonderful call. I'm going to. That brother has some knowledge. I appreciate him. I'm going to 310. What's going on?
Hello, Yvette, the Talk.
What's going on,
family? Couple things I want to come through. I'm come to the topic, but what's the trip is you just said something about a thread that the Black Caucus had. I think it was actually the NAACP. It was like black folks and April Ryan. Actually, the Black Caucus did one, I think, and the NAACP. And what did it say about your black representatives? About your black orgs, if they have no idea that black people are largely wealthless. And I think that one of the things that's a trip about the data ultimately in the charts is charts are really good, you close. But when they tell you that ultimately you as a group that are owed the amount of wealth that we're owed have not been made whole and no one cares, I wonder if it means ultimately, like, when we come to Project Takeover, when we come to something that Black America can't really digest, and so as a result, they just run and just create, like, fantasy. Because I don't have any idea how most Black families even, like, exist without any wealth. Like, in an America where, like let's talk middle class. April Ryan said something about a black middle class. Well, we know that the ruler can be set by white folks, not because they're white, but because they have all the wealth. So a middle white family is about $150 grand. $150 grand net. Not liquid, but net. Well, you don't get to that to the top 10% of black families. And all 10% of those are retirees. So how are black folks out here looking at this data, looking at these charts, and coming to a conclusion that they don't have to do politics? Well, I think ultimately it's because the whole model is a grifter model. Like, of being here in America. And Clarence Thomas is the epitome of it, but everybody's been living this way. This is the Holly Berry business suit, Martin, Orangina, Cosby Show model that's been the last 30 years. It's kind of like, I'm just going to grift. And so, like, when I'm just going to grift my way to the top. this is Boomerang with the perfume salesman, and I just feel like in a lot of ways this is Adolf presents an identity crisis for Black America in so many ways, and one of them, of course, is the whole idea of Africanness. But another one is about being a super capitalist. And as we start to shatter those, what is left when you take away Africanness, super capitalism from the African American of the 90s? What is left? And I think everybody's going to have to ask that question and answer that question themselves. And what I see is a splintering whereby you just have like fantastical kind of like creations of identity, whereby we're just going to become Black women and that's a group. That's not a group. Black people is a group because of the history in this country. Black women are not a specific group. Then we're going to say we're the most struggling. But when the data comes out, we see that more Black men are incarcerated. That's the worst thing next to death in a society than all women on the planet. So that that position doesn't even hold. You go to school much more than the counterpart, your counterpart. So how are you saying this as a group? And we're going to define it by having more struggling. Or are you going to say, I'm trans and we're shot down? Well, if your numbers of being shot down as a trans Black man are at the same numbers as a regular heterosexual Black man, how are you creating this as a subgroup? Don't make no sense. And so, like, what we end up with having is that everybody's trying to, you ever seen when you squeeze a rag and it got water at the end? Squeeze their own version of the worst kinds of oppression, but the numbers don't actually add up because it all comes back to Blackness. And that brings me to, this chart that I want you to pull up. Because Clarence Thomas, if you can, I emailed it to you. Clarence Thomas, you pointed out earlier that he said something about Jim Crow being a better time. But we've shown this chart with colors and everything else, and you've seen it before where it shows is the wealth spread, and it shows that we have the most extreme wealth inequality in the history of the nation right now. We both, the top 0.1 and the bottom 90 share the same amount of wealth. Those lines have crossed now. And so we haven't seen that since the 30s. So what Clarence Thomas is actually, understand this, it's the stupidest thing ever. He's celebrating Jim Crow when actually what he's actually looking at is the expression of the New Deal and big government. So instead of saying we just need bigger government, he wants to keep small government small and then say, well, Jim Crow was better. That don't even make sense. That's not what you were looking at. What you were looking at was a government that was effectively deciding that it wanted to create a middle class, that it wanted to create a Clarence Thomas. And so now, instead of just saying we need bigger government, he said something about Jim Crow. That don't even make sense. You know what I'm saying, Yvette?
Yeah, I know exactly what you say. He doesn't understand it, though. He doesn't understand the America that he lives in. He thinks he does.
Well, this is the problem I run into. A young lady called earlier and talked about her grandma, auntie, and everybody else. Y'all remember that call? Long call. If everybody that age ain't gonna understand America, what we gonna do with you? If they gonna be the ones that try to vote Biden in with no politics, what we gonna do with them? I guess everybody gotta answer that question. If Clarence Thomas don't understand the data, NAACP and the Black Caucus don't understand that we don't have a Black middle class, what we gonna do with them? And I don't know if everybody is ready to reconcile what we gotta do with these people, and these groups, and these organizations, and these people in position of power. And I feel like the last thing I want to talk about is just a little house cleaning. I want to make sure that I'm clear on the record, and I'll let Yvette chime in on the end. I want to chime in on three things. The first thing is, somebody sent me a video of Black men walking around with weaponry, trying to protect, patrol the community with guns. Adolf is in a seedling stage. That is not what we're trying to do. We're trying to do transformative politics. If you want to do that, please don't use the Adolf hashtag. You can do that if you want to. I'm not here to judge what you do over there. But please don't associate us with that patrolling. America has that's not our issue in America, that we don't have patrolling and people are busting in our house and stealing our rugs and TVs and
Not
things.
the rugs.
Our issue is a systemic, but that's the kind of visual. Like we in a third world developing country. And for those of you that, it's funny because people haven't traveled and really seen why you would need a patrol like that. That's not our issue today. Our issue is not a matter of you fixed by you patrolling with some guns looking like you ain't never trained with no gun. We don't need nobody patrolling no more. Please don't associate us with that. We need a systemic transformational change at the government level. We need a demand for reparations. We need a black agenda. We don't need you doing that. But you can do it, but don't associate us with it. And I'll let Yvette speak to that. But second, as to the chapters, I appreciate all the chapters being created. People are going to do that. This is an identity. My thing is that please be orderly and respectful to other people as you do this. People are going to bump heads. Please don't throw people away as soon as you bump heads. Please try to create these chapters and be positive and productive as you do it. Our hope is that we'll be able to create a central space on ADOS 101 or on breakingbrown.com where you can actually kind of create some kind of central space to exchange information as chapters. But we're thinking about that right now. The third and last thing I wanted to say is essentially there's supposed to be people lining up and organizing for the Civil Rights Act of 1866, and this will tie to my last point as well. I need you guys to understand what we want, what you need to do. The issue isn't you sitting in the courtroom, like my view. The issue is not a matter of you, like the HR 40 hearing. We need organized protests on the steps of the Supreme Court leading up to the hearing. We need them to see that as news coverage and let Comcast know that black folks ain't finna just be silent. Posters, anything else. But organize. Don't go out there as one person. That doesn't look right. But I'm just telling you that because, and I'm not saying that you shouldn't try to get in and sit down. But I'm saying the main issue is can we make it visual that we do the job that the NAACP and Urban League are supposed to be doing and protest this thing. Now, I'll say this as my last and final point to connect this all. One of the things that I think none of us, well, let me say, I can't convey to y'all about what I hear from some of the wealthiest black people in this country. Is the way that white racism isn't as simple as we make it, or in the past as we make it. I know we all say we understand it, it's here, but I don't think we understand the insidious, I'm going to shut you down, I don't want y'all to have nothing that exists in white America today. Let alone, I don't think none of y'all, well, let me say, nearly none of y'all really understand how there is no black wealth. Like, the people you believe are making money from these ventures, they might make $1 million a year from it, and that's the best black person in TV outside of St. Byron. What's ended up happening is that white folks, just like we see with Clarence Thomas, are creating the imagery of a black person on the Supreme Court, the imagery of a black person owning a station. But in actuality, they don't own and they aren't really positioned to do anything for black people. They aren't positioned in a way where it means the transformation that it's supposed to mean. So if that's not the case, then what's the difference? That is not what diversity, what change, what transformation is supposed to be. Clarence Thomas being on the court might as well be a white man. And it'd actually probably be better. That's why I'll leave it at that.
All right, Tom. Much appreciated. As usual. I don't know much about the guys who were running through the place with the guns or whatever, and they was protecting the community. I don't think we understand when that would be necessary, right? That's necessary when you're building up a country and you're on the frontier and you got to protect your stuff. Or like if there's been some kind of collapse of civilization, right? But what happens if it hasn't been that is that you end up shooting somebody that you shouldn't be shooting, or getting shot by the police or somebody else you shouldn't be. So, there's this whole, we want to feel a certain way. We want to do the right thing by our community. But I don't think we understand that the problem that we have is that police is supposed to be police. They're supposed to be police over here, and they're supposed to be police in our community too. And what we have is that these mechanisms that are supposed to protect us as citizens don't protect us. And the answer to that isn't like going to get machine guns and running through. Like, that's not the answer for that. And so you've diagnosed the problem, but you just don't have the right answer. And even in terms of wealth, I don't even think we understand how white people, social capital, and connect. So wealth is a community property. It's not something that you go and get individually. And half the people that you think are wealthy are really just running around When you talk about scraps, people always talk about the government. I don't want scraps from white people. What do you think these millionaires and celebrities are getting if not scraps from white people? That's all they doing. They running around getting a crumb. I got to be over here and get another crumb. I'm going to have 18 crumbs this month. 18 crumbs. It's not going to be a biscuit, but it's going to be a quarter biscuit. Like, that's what they're doing. It's not real wealth because they don't have a real community with wealth and with everything that we were supposed to have, and everybody knows it and everybody takes advantage of it. So I'm gonna go to the last call right now. I'm going to 757. What's going on?
What's up, Yvette Cornell?
What's going on, Otis?
Look, you had a wonderful show. Shout out to Tone for breaking it with the numbers, Reggie for running it down on the philosophical side. But I'm going to tell you, the beauty in all of this, you're building that grassroots. I see the maturity of the group. You talked about how people responded on Twitter, social media. But I'm going to tell you something else, too. I missed Alexander because all of this show ties together to that thing he told you about. See how black people function in front of white people?
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, that's a good point.
Clarence Thomas is that very same thing on the basic level, because you talked about how black people treated him, but you saw what happened when he got a hold of power. Goes back to the thing about revenge. Yep. But I'm going to tell you something else, and I'm going to keep it short. I'm not going to go over the whole thing you did tonight. But when you listen to each one of those lessons, you end up coming to the very same point that has held us back. They talk about deaths and people locked up, but the most dangerous people to us as a people have been the people that I've fought with for 40 years about claiming that they achieved on their own what we all know, and a couple of people even gave terms to it. Token niggas, token jobs, set aside 10%. I actually lived it from a kid to now. And seeing you and Tony, your generation, really understand that the people that have been most dangerous to us are not the ones they call thugs. It is the very people you're talking about now. When they got in positions as a collective, they suddenly became an I. And that has been the detriment of our people. Much love to you, sister.
No, thank you, Otis.
That love I got at the conference, the work that you all are doing, it is proven that you're standing in truth, my love. Do what you
Thank
do.
you.
Shout out to the Breaking Brown family. We've created some worthy warriors.
Yeah, thank you, Otis. Thank you, Otis. I appreciate that, and I want to do a shout out too, because I don't think the Breaking Brown family gets enough credit in terms of how far the Breaking Brown family has come. You know, from where we were to arguing over whether or not we can do it for self and all of that stuff. I don't think we understand that we have come a really long way, and like we should get credit for how far we've come. So if you go back and watch the old videos, we were still arguing over whether we can, LeVar Ball can have a shoe company, and people were telling me, yes, he can build it, he can build distribution, all that. You're just a hater, you're a hater, you're a hater, you're a dirty red hater. And now we're outside of that, right? And those are the conversations. So if you pay attention, we have kind of even the conversations that we're having, they're anchored in reality, as opposed to like some kind of wild aspiration, and all of that matters. And we have come a long way. That's not saying we ain't got a long way to go or whatever, but like give credit where credit is due. We're starting to understand what the data means and what it suggests for our lives and how to influence the people around us. I can't tell you how many people at the conference came up to me. This is my husband, this is my wife, this is my friend. I got my grandmama on board. I got, that kind of thing is happening and has happened. So I think we have to give ourselves credit for that, and it's meaningful. It's really meaningful in terms of how progression is slow, right? Even a lot of people think even when you run, I'm a runner, like you just get out there and I'm gonna do 2 miles. I'm gonna do it. No, you're not. If you ain't ran in a while, you're gonna do 1 block, right? And then you just do a little bit more every day. Like you might run to the signpost one day, and the next day you run to to this telephone pole. these are the small progressions that eventually have you running a marathon or whatever, or 10 miles or 5 miles or whatever you need to do. These are the small parts of the process, and the process is important. You got to stay focused on the process in terms of just like, oh, this is the big goal and we ain't got the big goal. Stay focused on the process and tweak the process, and increase doing what works and tamper down what doesn't work, and focus on the process. That's all I want to say about that. But fam, before we go, don't forget 24th of October, it's Thursday. We're gonna do the book club. It's usually the last Thursday, but the last Thursday I believe is Halloween. Where do we go from here? MLK. We're gonna do that. So please do not forget. If you are still there in the chat with me, I hope you are. Please, 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 before you go, I know you like to talk to the family, but before you go, please hit that like button for me. You don't do anything else. Before you go, just kick up the likes for me. I'd appreciate it. Share, subscribe if you have not. Hit that bell if you have not hit the bell. I'd appreciate that as well. If you have not hit the bell, I would appreciate if you would hit the bell so that you get notifications when I'm on. That would be a wonderful thing for me. You can also subscribe to the newsletter. The description is in there. You can go to donatebrown.com too if you want to do that. Patreon.com/ycarnell. All of that stuff is stuff that you can do. That, you know, and you decide. Like, it's, you know, there are all kinds of ways that you don't have to pay that really count and matter to me. So, fam, until next time, I think those are all of my announcements for the evening. Good evening. I think those are all my announcements, but that's going to be the end of the show, fam. We're like 2 hours and 16 minutes, so I'm going to let everybody finish up their libations. Finish up your libations and get some rest, because politics is what it is, and we're going to have to start up again and do the whole thing over again. So, fam, get some rest. I appreciate you showing up and being here late with me all the time. Thank you. You are appreciated. Until next time, fam. Take it easy. Bye.